Hey everyone, welcome to part 62 of my Pokemon game series in Unity. So this is the second part of TMs and HMs. So in this video, we'll implement HMs. So HM items are reusable and we can use it multiple times and it won't be removed from the inventory. Alright, so if I select a TM or HM item, we'll show whether a Pokemon can learn that move or not. So here you can see both Charmander and Bulbasaur is able to learn Cut, but Pidgey is not able to learn Cut. So Pokemon will only be able to learn specific moves by using TM and HM items. So we'll implement all this in this video. Special thanks to all my Patreons for making this series possible. By becoming a Patreon, you can support me and get access to the complete project files of the series. The project files also contain some advanced features that are not covered on YouTube. So let's start the video. So in Pokemon games, we can't use TM and HM items when we are in a battle, right? We can only use it outside the battle. So let's look at how we can block the player from using TMs when they are in a battle. Alright, so we had to handle a similar case for Pokeballs. So for Pokeballs, we check the game state from the use function. So the Pokeball will only be allowed to use if the game state is battle. But we can't do the same approach in TM. The reason is because the code to use TM item is executed before we call this function, right? So if you look at the inventory UI, in the use item function, the code to use TM items will be executed when we call this function. So we'll have to add another if condition here and only execute this function if we are outside the battle. But I'm not going to implement it like that. Instead, I'm going to implement it in such a way that we can easily mark what all items can be used inside the battle and outside the battle. Okay, if we do like this, it'll be much easier when we add new types of items in the future. So to implement this, let me open my item base script. So in here, we have a virtual function called use that we override from the subclasses, right? So similar to virtual functions, we can also create virtual properties that we can override from the subclasses. Okay, so here I'll create a virtual property and this will be a boolean called can be used in battle, and by default I'll return true for it. Okay, let me actually change its name to can use in battle so that it's a bit more shorter. Alright, so next I'll duplicate this and create another property called can use outside battle. Okay, so by default the value of both these properties are true, but if we want its value to be false for any item, then we can override it and set it to false. Okay, so in the case of TM item, we should not be able to use it in a battle, right? So I'll override the can use in battle property and I'll just return false. Okay, and we don't have to override the can use outside battle property because we want it to be true for TM items, right? So since its value is true by default, we don't have to override it. So next, let's go to the Pokeball item, and in here we should not be able to use the Pokeball item outside the battle, right? So I'll override can use outside battle property and return false for it. Okay. So in the case of recovery item, we don't have to override anything because we want both of these values to be true, right? We can use recovery items inside the battle and outside the battle. So no need to override these properties. So let me just close this. So next, we need to check the value of these properties before we use an item. So in the inventory UI, when an item is selected, this function will be called. So in this function, we should write those checks. So first, I'll check if we are currently in a battle. So for that, I'll say if game controller dot instance dot state is equal to game state dot battle. That means we are in a battle, and otherwise we are outside the battle, right? So next, we need to check these properties of the item. So for that, first we need to get a reference to the item. So we have the index in the selected item, right? So I'll call inventory dot get item and pass the item index and also the category index. Okay. And let me store this in a variable called item. So now if we are in a battle and if item dot can use in battle is false, then we should not allow to use the item, right? So here we can show a dialog like you can't use this item in battle. So let me just copy the line to show a dialog. And for the dialog, I'll say this item cannot be used in battle. Okay. And by the way, if we want to use shield return, then we should make this function a coroutine, right? So let me do that. And now when we call this function, we have to put it inside start coroutine. Okay. So let me go back to this function. And after showing the dialog, we can just use shield break to stop this coroutine. And we don't want to execute any of this code, right? So next, there is one more thing that we need to do. So since this is a coroutine and this will last for more than one frame, we have to make sure that nothing else will happen when this coroutine is running. Okay, so for that, we can simply set the state to busy, and this will block everything else when this coroutine is running. Okay, and before we exit the coroutine, we can set the state back to item selection so that the user can select another item. All right. So next, when we are outside the battle, we need to check for can use outside battle property, right? So I'm just going to copy this code and I'll change can use in battle to can use outside battle. And for the dialog, I'll say this item cannot be used outside battle. Okay, so that's all we have to do. So now when we add a new type of item, all we have to do is set the value of these properties like this, and you don't have to change any code inside the inventory UI. Okay, so now for the Pokeball item, we don't have to check for this condition. We just have to override this variable, right? So I'll remove all this code and just return true from the use function. All right, so let's go to Unity and test if everything works. So if I try to use a Pokeball outside the battle, you can see that we'll get this dialog. So that's working. So next, let me try using TMs from battle. Okay, so you can see it cannot be used in battle, but if we try to use it outside the battle, it works as usual. Okay, so that is working fine. So next, let's implement HMs. So let me go to my TM item script, and in here, I'll create a new serialized variable called isHM. Okay, and let me also create a property to expose it. All right, so the main difference with HM items is that we'll be able to use the HM item multiple times, right? So it's reusable, and we should not remove it from the inventory when we use it. So what I'll do is, in the item base, I'll create another virtual property called isReusable. Okay, and by default, I'll return false for it. Okay, I'm returning false because most of the items are not reusable. Only HMs and key items are reusable. So I'll return false by default, and then we can override it from the TM item. So here I'll override is reusable property, and for this property we should return true if the item is an HM, and otherwise we should return false, right? So what we can do is we can simply return the value of this variable. So if this is true, then the property will be true, and otherwise it will be false. Okay, so now all we have to do is, if the item is a reusable item, then while using it we should not remove it, right? So from here I'll check if the item is not reusable item, and we should only remove it if it's not a reusable item, right? So that's all we have to do. So let's go to Unity and create an HM item and test. So inside resources, first I'll create a move for the HM. So let me just duplicate scratch and rename it to cut. Okay, I'm not going to change any values right now, but you can go ahead and fill in the correct values. So now let me go to the TM and HMs and create a new HM item. Okay, I'll name this HM01. All right, so this HM will be used to teach cut, right? And we should set is HM boolean to true. Okay, So let me give it an icon and description. All right. So let me add this HM to the player's inventory. Okay, I'll change the size of this to 3, and the third item will be HM. All right. So let's go ahead and test this. Okay. So we have our HM over here. So let me try using it on my Pokemon. Okay, so Charmander learned Cut, but you can see that the HM is still in our inventory, right? It was not removed after we used it. So now we can use this HM on another Pokemon if we want. So yeah, we can reuse it as many times as we want. So next, while showing the TMs and HMs in this list, we should also show the name of the move, right? It's really hard to understand which move this TM or HM will teach if the move name is not shown over here. So to do that, the hard way to do that would be to add the move name in the name of each item. So I can add it like this, but that's not a good way, right? It's redundant and it's something that can be automated. So let's use the power of inheritance to automate this. So what I'll do is in the item base, I'll make my name property virtual so that we can override it from the subclasses. So now let me go to the TM item class and I'll override the name property from here. Okay. So here, along with the name, we can also add the name of the move, right? So I'll just add it like this. Okay. And by the way, if you're not familiar with inheritance in C Sharp, base.name will give you the value of the name property in the parent. All right. So whenever you want to get the value in the parent, you can use the base keyword. Okay. So let's go ahead and test this. All right. So yeah, here you can see the name of the move is also shown in the list. And by the way, you can do the same for the description. If descriptions of all your TM and HM items are similar, then you don't have to write it manually for each item. Instead, you can just generate it like we did right now. Okay. So next, we need to handle few cases while using TM and HM items. So right now, by using a TM or HM item, we can teach a move to a Pokemon even if the Pokemon already has that move. Okay, so let me show you. All right, let me open up the TMs and let's say I want to teach cut to my Bulbasaur. All right, so my Bulbasaur learned cut, but now I can use this TM again and the Bulbasaur will learn it once more. Okay, so now in the moves, Bulbasaur will have 2 cut moves. So we need to block this. If the Pokemon already has a move, then we should not teach it again. So in the inventory UI script, before we teach a move, we should check if the Pokemon already has that move. Okay, so I'll check if the Pokemon has this move by using the has move function. All right, so we can get the move from TM item.move. So if the Pokemon already has this move, then we can show a dialog saying the Pokemon already know this move. Okay. And then we can just use heal break to exit out of this coroutine. So yeah, let's try testing this. All right. So let me use cut on my Bulbasaur. So it learned cut. But if I try to use it again, it'll show this message saying Bulbasaur already know cut, and we won't be able to teach it again. All right, so that works properly. So next, we need to handle another case. So right now, we can teach any move to any of our Pokemon by using TM or HM, right? But a Pokemon should only be able to learn a specific list of moves. So for example, we shouldn't be able to teach a move like Thunder Wave to Charmander, right? So let's handle that next. So the way Pokemon games handle this is by keeping a list of moves that can be learned by TM for each Pokemon. Okay, so if you look at the details of a Pokemon in a site like Pokemon DB, here you can see each Pokemon will have a list of moves that can be learned by using TMs and HMs. Okay, so let's also add such a list in our Pokemon class. Actually, we should add it to the Pokemon base class, right? So in our Pokemon base, right now we have a list called learnable moves, but this is a list of moves that the Pokemon can learn by level up, right? So here we need to create another list for moves that can be learned by using TMs and HMs. Okay, so this will be a list of move base, and I'll call this learnable by items. Okay, so let me also create a property to expose it. So I'll create a property over here. So now, before teaching a move using TM or HM, we should also check if the move is in this list. Okay, so from here, before teaching a move, we can check if Pokemon dot base dot learnable by items dot contains this move. Okay, so I think this is a bit long. Let's clean this up by moving this into a function. So inside TM item class, I'll create a new public function called can be taught. Okay, and this function will take the Pokemon to which we are trying to teach the move. All right, and from here we just have to check if the move is contained in this list. Okay, so let's just return the value of this. And by the way, we don't have to use TM item over here. We can use the move directly. So now from the inventory UI, we can simply call TM item dot can be taught function. Okay, and if this returns false, that means the Pokemon can't be taught this move. Then we can show a dialog saying the Pokemon can't learn this. Okay, and I'll just use yield break to stop the coroutine. All right, so let's go to Unity and test this. So before we test, we should assign values to the new list. Okay, so here we have a new list, and let's say Charmander can learn moves like cut and flamethrower. And by the way, you can just multi-select all Pokemons and assign the common TM moves that can be taught to all Pokemons. Okay, so let's say all Pokemons can learn quick attack and tackle. So you can easily assign it like this. You don't have to assign it one by one. So I'll just select my Bulbasaur and add a few more moves to it so that we can test properly. So let's say Bulbasaur can learn cut and it can also learn Vine Whip. Okay, so let's try testing now. All right, so if I select a move like Sing and try to teach it to my Charmander, it'll say Charmander can't learn Sing and we won't be able to teach the move. Okay, and by the way, there is an issue. After this dialog, we are showing it won't have any effect. So let's fix that first. All right, so in the use item function, this is where we are showing that message, but we only want to show it if we are trying to use a recovery item, right? So I'll just add an if condition and that should solve the issue. So let's go ahead and test. Okay, so if I try to teach Sing to my Charmander, it won't be able to learn it, and now we don't have the other message. Okay, so if I try to teach a move that the Charmander can learn, then it will learn that move. Okay, so this is good, but it would be better if we show in the UI whether the Pokemon can learn the move or not, right? Otherwise, the player will have to try and use the TM on all the Pokemons to see if the Pokemon can learn that move. So let's show that in the UI. Okay, so I'll go to my game folder and find my party screen prefab. So let me open that and enable it. Okay, so here we have another prefab for party member. Okay, so in here I'll add another text which we can use to show if the Pokemon is able to learn the move or not. Okay, so let me just duplicate my name text and I'll call this text something like message text because I want to use this text to show any messages that I have, not just the able or not able message that we are trying to show now. Okay, so let me bring this down, and for the text I'll write something like not able just for getting some reference. So now if we go out of this prefab, you can see we have the text in all our party member UI. So let me actually change the height of the cell in the grid. So right now it's 150. So let me change it to something like 170. Okay, so that looks better. We can make this a bit more bigger and I'll just position it at the exact center. Okay, so next let's go to the party member UI script. Okay, and in here I'll also add a reference to the message text that we created now. So let me just copy this and create a reference for the message text. Okay, so let's go inside the party member prefab and assign the message text. So next, in the party member UI script, I'll create a new function for setting a message to our message text. Okay, so this function will take a string as input, and we can simply set that string to our message text. Okay, so by default, I don't want any message to be shown. So from the init, I'll call set message and pass empty string so that nothing will be shown in the message text. So next, in the inventory UI, when we select an item and when we open the party screen, if the item is a TM item, then we should show if the TM is usable, right? So inside my party screen script, I'll create a new function called show if TM is usable. Okay, and this function will take a TM item as the parameter. So inside this function, we need to loop through all the Pokemons. So I'll use a for loop and I'll say I less than Pokemons dot count. Okay, so for each Pokemon, we should check if the TM item is usable, right? So I'll call TM item dot can be taught, and for the Pokemon, I'll pass Pokemons of I. Okay, so if the move can be taught, then I'll return able for the message, and otherwise I'll return not able. Okay, and I'll store this in a variable called message, and I'll set this message to the member slot UI, so we can get the member slot UI from member slots of I, and I'll call the set message function to set the message. Okay, so next I'll also create a function to clear these messages. So let me just copy this function and I'll change its name to clear TM usable message. Okay, so for this function, we don't need a parameter, and all we have to do is set the message to an empty string so that it will be cleared. Okay, so let's go ahead and call these functions from the inventory UI. So here, while opening the party screen, if the item is TM item, then we can call party screen dot show if TM is usable, and we need to pass the TM item, right? So we can convert the item into a TM item using the ask keyword. All right. So next, when close party screen is called, we should also clear any messages that was shown, right? So from here, I'll call party screen dot clear TM usable message. By the way, we don't have to name this clear TM usable message because this can be used to clear any messages that's shown in the slot. So I'll just rename this to clear member slot messages. Okay, so we are clearing it when we close the party screen, and when we open the party screen, we are showing the TM usable messages if the item is a TM item. Okay, so let's go to Unity and try testing this. All right, so if we try to use a TM or HM item, we can see that both Charmander and Bulbasaur is able to learn the move, but Pidgey is not able to learn, right? Pidgey can't learn cut. Okay, so that's working fine. By the way, let's actually go back and try using a normal item. So if I try using a potion, then we don't have any message shown. So yeah, it's being cleared properly. Okay, the messages are only shown for TM and HM items. So yeah, that works as expected, but the UI is not really good. You should go ahead and create a better UI. But since this is a tutorial, I'm not going to spend much time on creating a good UI. Okay, so we're done with TM and HM items. So I'll stop the video here. If you think these videos are helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. You can also support the series by becoming a Patreon. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.